Live, local, now. This is a WSFA 12 News special, remembering April 27th, 15 years later.
So this will be a long-term multiple wave event with large hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes.
It's as if the hand of God had slammed down on the middle of our city. In the past 66 hours, we have seen the obliteration of our neighborhoods.
People's lives have been just turned upside down.
It was like having nuclear weapons go off in all different parts of the state.
You felt that stillness and you knew something was fixing to happen.
The park's gone, and I didn't realize how gone he meant.
You tried to keep those memories buried.
I ran out my front door, and I said, God, please don't take her, and I fell on my knees. I just didn't think that this day would come.
April 27th isn't just another day on the calendar, at least not for the last 15 years. It's a day that is known for a level of death and destruction that is rarely ever seen in the United States. It's the day that dozens of tornadoes tore through our state. 253 people died. Hundreds of homes were left in ruins, and billions of dollars worth of damage was left in the wake of these storms. For those who survived, or for those who maybe lost a loved one, it is now a defining moment of their lives. It's time that is now counted by families as something that happened before April 27th or after. And it's a scar that still aches, and one that will never fully heal for many. On this 15-year anniversary, we look back at the tragedy, and we want to begin close to home. While the majority of the 62 confirmed tornadoes that hit the northern half of the state that day were destructive, there was an EF4 that impacted Elmore County. It then later tore a path through Tallapoosa County. 7 people died, and 4 of them lived at Myers Country Acres in Eclectic.
The morning started like any other morning. We get up and we do what we do around here. And about middle of the day, it got to feeling really muggy and just didn't feel quite right. Then we were under a tornado warning. We encouraged people to go somewhere else when we had bad weather because of mobile homes not being safe, but many people don't want to leave, and they don't want to leave their pets, so they stayed.
My son and I were living out here at Country Acres. And it really started off for me like any other morning. My son had a doctor's appointment.
When I left, it was real muggy outside for that time of the morning. It was really, felt almost like summer. And the wind was already blowing. It just felt really weird. I went to my appointment and I went down to Montgomery. And we kind of just watched the weather throughout the day.
Later on, we realized that I had forgotten his medicine. And he has to have his medicine every day. And by this time, it was already late in the afternoon. And so I got in the car and I knew, I hurried. When I turned in close to the Madix entrance, it looked very strange. Just the color. It's hard for me to describe the color. It's almost like a gray look. And the wind was blowing, but it was blowing different. The longer I was in my home, it started getting worse and worse and worse. And I looked out the front door, and when I did, the wind was really blowing. It was starting to look bad. And I thought, oh my gosh. I got scared. I started getting scared. I got the medicine and everything, got in the car, and turned around as I was driving off one last time, and I looked at my home, and I said, God, please don't let anything bad happen tonight.
Me and my grandmother were just, waiting for her to get back. And we heard the tornado warning was issued for Eclectic. And she was not back yet. She, I guess, was on the way, and we were panicking.
Around 8 o'clock, My husband went out on the front porch. We had already gotten in our closet. He went out on the front porch to check the weather, and he comes back in and jumps in the closet and says, "We're fixing to be hit." And we were hit. This house felt like a box of Cracker Jacks being shaken for just an instant, and then it was all over, and everything was total darkness. The silence and the darkness after a tornado is just so different and unusual. When you walk through your house, you see that little blue light on the charger or on your TV or on your oven. There's some lights in your house. If you walk through your house at night, you're going to see lights. After that tornado, there was no lights. There was no anything. Everything's total darkness. And the silence is just, you hear air conditioners. You hear different noises. I didn't hear anything. I don't even think animals were making a noise. You know, crickets aren't making noises. I mean, it's total silence. I could hear people in the park hollering, "Help me." But you could hear the voices of them calling for help, but you couldn't see anybody, and it was really hard to find people, and some of them were buried under debris.
We got a phone call. I don't even know what time it was. My mother got up and answered the phone. It was because it was her home. And I knew instantly what had happened. I think Miss Myers asked my mother, "Please tell me that Tammy and Stephen are with you." And she said yes. And my mother said, "What's wrong?" And that's when Miss Myers told her that a tornado had hit and everything was gone.
I was on the carport, and it didn't seem like it was 5 minutes before there was firemen in their uniforms and in their boots and everything running from the road down here with flashlights. "Are you okay? Is there anybody in the house?" And they were going door to door, and then when they got up there, there was no doors, there was no mobile homes. They were just having to dig around for people. The traffic was stopped on this road because, unfortunately, we had bodies in the road, and the traffic was stopped on both ends, so people had to get out of their vehicles, like the firemen and all. They had to get out of their vehicles and search through debris for people. My husband died in December, was a year ago, and he died remembering having to identify dead bodies. My husband was asked to identify his sister-in-law and his niece who had been killed in the tornado. That scene never left him. He never recovered from that. That was just a horrible memory that he kept.
When we got up here, it was horrible. It like took my breath away. It was I couldn't fathom what I was looking at. I couldn't process that. I couldn't understand how that happened, how a tornado could pick a mobile home up like that off of the frame. It even bent the frame.
It was a lot colder the next morning, I know that. And I didn't have a jacket with me. I didn't really have anything, just stuff I was wearing. And we came up here, and we couldn't drive all the way down to the park, so we had to walk. And I remember looking at my mom, even though being 9 years old, and saying, "I don't know if I can stand to look at what I'm fixing to look at." And when we went around the corner, everything was just gone. Nothing looked the same.
And we know that we were kind of fortunate in the fact that we had no more fatalities than we did. We had 4 people killed, but we had so many others injured and affected by the tornado, but they didn't lose their lives. After we started putting our part back together, one of the first things we did was put in a storm shelter, and we have it available now, and people are so much more willing to go to a storm shelter now because they've seen a tornado. Before, we couldn't get them to go to safety because they didn't realize how bad it was. But once you live through it, you're willing to go to a safe place. We had people call us wanting to come back home because they considered this home. We put mobile homes back in. Some people came back, but then they found out they couldn't live out here and live in a mobile home because when the weather would get bad, it was just something they couldn't endure.
I'm just so thankful that my son and I were not here. I'm glad that I listened to him. I always say he's my little hero because I would have been out here probably.
There's nightmares, there's bad dreams. There's also the feeling of sympathy, I guess. I don't know any other word to say for the people that lost more than we did, and the guys that worked it. That's the ones I really had a tender heart for because these guys grew up here. They were working here trying to find bodies, and they were looking, it was like some other country that had been bombed. I mean, that's the way it looked. And these guys had gone to school here. They'd rode school buses up and down this road, and here they are looking at a war zone. It's a war zone. It really looked like a war zone. The memories of all that is pretty tough. I mean, it's not, you try to keep those memories buried. It's not something you ever want to go through.
That same storm stretched 44 miles, and in its path, homes were leveled and trees were snapped like toothpicks. But one family was able to make it to their safe place, all as their home was being pulled apart around them.
It was a normal day, we thought. I'm a teacher, so we were dismissed a half a day that day, and so I come home just enjoying the fact that I had a half a day. So I did as usual and cooked dinner, and we had dinner that night, and then I went for a walk with a friend in the neighborhood. And even though we were hearing on TV, you know, all that was going on in Tuscaloosa, it's like that was forever away.
I was 18 years old, senior in high school. It was a half a day that day. So we got out of school early, and I went and filled my car up with gas, and we went to a buddy's house, and we you know, not weather aware at all. So we went and built a slip and slide in his backyard, and we had fun. I remember going to church that night, and then it had been canceled, and then I came home. Well, when I got to the house, I remember watching all of the replays of the tornado that was going through Tuscaloosa. You never think that it's going to happen to you. That's all the way in Tuscaloosa. I'm in small town Davil, Alabama. So I remember vividly going out onto our front porch and sitting in our swing. I don't know if I've ever sat in a swing ever in my 18 years at that house. And I remember being on the swing and just feeling the heat in the air, and it just, something felt eerie about that day.
What I remember is how warm it was, how windy it was, and then I think there'd been, from what I can remember, and that's been a while back, but you know, there'd been some lead up as to what was could happen that day. And then while at work, on the TV, they had the weather on, and there was a storm chaser, and we were watching as he was recording and seeing the shot when it crossed the one in Tuscaloosa, and it crossed over McFarland right there. So we watched that and kind of kept up with it as that tornado went on through and went toward Birmingham. So I got off at 5 o'clock that afternoon and come in, still warm, windy. We had dinner, we were sitting there, and then so we turned the TV on. When y'all were on, I turned it on. I'm a junkie. I follow it, watch it. But and we were watching, and then this one kicked up in Elmore County down there, and you know, it was at that point in time, after seeing what had transpired in Tuscaloosa, it was like, okay, so we really need to pay attention.
And all three of us were kind of doing our own thing. So, you know, I had taken it as an opportunity to go to bed early that night. I actually was in bed listening to the weather, and Joel, he was watching TV in the great room, and our son was in the game room. And So we were kind of doing our own thing, but yet being attentive. And so once I heard that the tornado was headed towards Stillwaters.
Yeah, I remember starting in Elmore County and then was coming across and went into Stillwaters talking about the debris ball.
Yes.
So I remember that. We were doing that, and then when it said, and then you was coming from there and come through Dadeville, so I go to the game room, tell my son, I said, well, we need to go get in the closet.
When I heard that, I immediately went to our safe room, which is the walk-in closet, so that I could clean out the floor so we'd have a place to get.
I can remember my dad coming into the game room and saying, hey, you know, we need to get in the closet. I don't know if I had ever gone and sat in the closet for weather because you just never think that it's gonna happen to you. So being an 18-year-old, it was all nonchalant. Okay, I'll go get in the closet. So we went and go get in the closet, and it was minutes before it was like a bomb went off.
We had got our pets, we went to the closet and turned the TV on in the bedroom up loud enough so that we could hear.
For me, it was slow motion. I never heard the train noise or anything like that. I can remember up to the moments before it's here, it felt like an earthquake. It's just an earthquake. Okay, maybe it's nearby. It's not coming straight at us. And then the next thing that I feel is I thought my head was gonna pop. I mean, the pressure was just unbelievable. And then the roof goes, then the power goes. It's hard to put into words or even to describe pine trees just twisting, trees in general just twisting. And for maybe the 10-15 seconds that all of this is going on, I mean, it felt like minutes. And then the smell of the pines will never leave my mind.
The noise of the debris ball, the sound was so loud. It was just a rumbling. And so the pressure was so bad that we thought our heads were going to explode. And of course, it seemed like a long time, but it was just seconds. So once it actually got to us and the roof, it just kind of exploded, basically. You know, the roof went off of the house, and you know, I had prayed that it not take long.
To describe to you the way it sounded to me, if you've ever poured gasoline out, and we're all told not to do that, but if you do that and you strike a match and you know how you get that kind of woof sound, magnify that by 100 times. And that's what it sounded like to me when the roof came off. Because when the roof came off, I said, there goes the roof. I mean, it was obvious what had just happened.
And it was almost like a roller coaster ride. You know, we were shaking, and the 2x4s, some came in, but we were not injured. And while we were in the closet, you know, Joel was trying to hold the door shut so that it wouldn't.
It was, I guess, from the pressure or whatever, it was trying to blow the door open. So I was holding the door closed. At that point in time, I think my job was, as we were sitting in there, I was trying to keep the door closed, so I was focused on what was at hand, which was just trying to keep that door closed during that short period of time. But it never did cross it just never crossed my mind that we would not make it.
You know, I feel like our faith kept us mentally, you know, together. You know, as far as just feeling like we're going to make it. By being there, our lives were spared. I just feel like if we'd been anywhere else in the house, our lives would not have been spared.
When I open the door to the closet and I look out, so I'm looking through where the dressing area to the bathroom area, and I see the pool, I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'm looking out and I'm looking at the pool. So then I come out and I look to the left and I'm looking at the woods. So everything on that end of the house, of course, was gone. The walls, roof, nothing left. I walk out, I walk around, I'm like, yeah, all the vehicles are destroyed. Everything else is tore up. Most everything has blown away. And so numb, really, just numb. It's just hard. You know, I really didn't have, I don't think I really had a feeling.
And then we couldn't get help. But eventually, I got a text message from one of our neighbors who asked, were we okay? And I said, we are okay, but we need help.
It was really difficult. I'll take a moment. That's right, I'm a senior in high school. I was supposed to be going to the University of Alabama to college. Already been accepted. So when I walk out and you see that nothing's gone, you just felt like that all the dreams that you had for yourself are now put on the back burner. Because I had all these plans set out for myself. So it was an extremely humbling moment for myself. Because I didn't end up doing what I wanted to do. I still had the opportunity to do that, but after the fact, I didn't feel that it was right for me to leave everything behind when everything had just been dismantled. So I changed my plans, and I'm thankful that I changed my plans. But it was an extremely humbling moment for myself because you just, being an 18-year-old senior in high school, I've got everything laid out. I know exactly what's gonna happen, my whole life planned out, and then 15 seconds changed everything.
We've always been very prideful, like, you know, we've never asked for help. We've always done things on our own and that kind of thing, but it really humbled us. You know, we had to have help. Every little thing. I mean, people brought us clothes, food. Now, when bad weather comes, I think I'm more fearful because I know what can happen. I have a bag with all of my important stuff, and you know, I feel like I'm better prepared because of what we went through, even though we don't want anyone to have to go through that to learn that lesson.
Be prepared, have a plan, know where you need to go, and just be weather aware. I mean, y'all say it all the time, but pay attention and have a plan and know what you're going to do so that when it does happen or you get that warning, so that at that point in time it just becomes execution.
As part of being prepared, be sure you've got multiple sources of getting that information because, you know, I think over and over in my head, what if we had lost power prior to the 5 minutes? We wouldn't be here if we had not had those resources because it was just TV. That's all we were listening to at the time.
Every student I have has a cell phone now. So it's a lot easier for me to explain to them that it's a lot easier for you to be weather aware now than it was back when I was a teenager or going through high school. So I always try to tell them to be weather aware, to have a plan, because again, you just never know.
A home lost rarely impacts a single person. For this family in Pleasant Grove, just outside of Birmingham, one person was inside, but there are 4 stories of survival, of fear, of not knowing if they'd ever see their loved one again.
Well, I knew there was a storm coming. Lee had told Katie, and Katie told me that 2 o'clock was probably when it was going to really get started bad. So I ran a few errands, got home before 2, and was watching TV, and thought, you know, I need to call my son. He's in Troy. And I was talking to him on my little flip phone, little cell phone. And we got in touch with each other. We were talking and everything, and the computer wasn't responding like I wanted it to. And I could hear things popping, like a popping sound. And I told Matthew, I said, you know, that could be trees popping. And I don't know, I guess it's just the Lord just said, go. And I just jumped up and ran down the hall and tried to, with Matthew on the phone the whole time, and tried to go. We had a door that went down into the basement, you know, of our home and the kitchen. And I tried to open the door, but it had already jammed and just shaking. It wouldn't open. And I just stood, you know, I just stood there amazed. I couldn't believe what was going on around me. Just things swirling around, the windows had burst out, and it was just chaos. And then just standing back and looking around, and you know, at everything that was going on around me, it was just, it's like you're in a dream and this isn't real, you know. And then something bumped me in the head, not really bad, but enough to get my attention, and I thought, I need to get out. So I got down beside the door and just prayed, and the Lord just took care of me.
I was at work, and we had all gone in the break room, and we were all underneath a table. And when it had passed, I got a call from my brother, and he was like, something's happened to Mom. I don't know what's going on. You've got to get to her. So I said, okay, you know, let me call her and see if she's okay. So I called her, and she said, something's like, we got hit by the tornado. Come get me. And I said, here I come. So I probably worked maybe 10 minutes away. So I got there before there was any emergency vehicles or, I mean, anything. So I got to a point where I couldn't go any further. There was trees and power lines. And so I had to turn around, and I parked in a grocery store. We had a little local grocery store, the parking lot, and I was just trying to call everybody, trying to call Dad, trying to call Mom again, trying to call Lee, trying to call Matthew, and you just couldn't get through. It wouldn't even ring. And so I knew Mom was okay because I had talked to her, but I didn't know about Dad. And it was just that time, and I didn't know if Lee had gotten my messages.
I worked in Hoover, Alabama, and my normal work day was a pretty long one, so I got a phone call probably about 4 o'clock that said return back to the work yard, and so I thought, man, it's gonna be a great day, you know. And where we were in Hoover, the weather was beautiful. Felt great, wasn't, you know, hot or cold, or wasn't raining. It was beautiful sky. I was kind of none the wiser about what was going on. And so cleaned out my work truck, and a coworker of mine had pulled in, and he said, you know, did you hear about Tuscaloosa? And I was like, well, what's going on in Tuscaloosa? He said, well, man, apparently there's a pretty bad tornado going through Tuscaloosa. It's messing up pretty bad. I thought, man, that's terrible. You know, I can't believe that. And then as I was kind of walking away from him, he said, I heard it's headed to Hueytown next. And, you know, me being newlywed, 5 months in, it didn't click immediately like it probably should have. But about 30 seconds later, I remembered my wife was working in Hueytown, and so I kind of went into a bit of a panic mode, and I sprinted back to my truck just because I didn't have my phones on me. And I grabbed my phone, and I looked, and I had 4 missed calls and a bunch of voicemails, and I checked the voicemail, and all I could hear was her crying. And so I thought, you know, something really bad, you know, is happening. So I just abandoned my work truck, got to my personal truck, and left Hoover and drove towards Bessemer. It took me probably 6 minutes to get from Hoover into Bessemer, which should have taken me 15. I pushed my little truck as fast as it could possibly go. And about the time I got parked in Pleasant Grove Park, I was able to get her on the phone. And so I was immediate relief because I was worried. But in the conversation, she said, I got to get to my mama. And, you know, when you marry into a family, you don't think about, you know, the relationships that you build, but, you know, it was like my mama too. So, I mean, I did what I had to do. I somehow remembered to bring work gloves, and I had my climbing boots on, so I was ready to, you know, I was ready to do whatever I had to do to get back there.
I just waited, and then I saw Lee coming up. And then we walked from that little grocery store, it's probably half a mile, to where the barricade was, where all the trees and the power lines were. And it had started to rain, and where the barricade was, there was a house that had no damage. And so we all went up, and he let us stay on his front porch. And I naively just thought, they'll just clear all this up, and I can still go get her. I mean, it was just in my mind, I just didn't know the severity of it. And we stayed there for a long time, just waiting. And, you know, they were starting to bring people out that were hurt, and people were going in with chainsaws.
I can remember it cleared up because, you know, usually after a tornado, that's pretty skies, and it just bottom fell out again. My first thought was, man, there's people without roofs. Their stuff's just going to get even more damaged now, you know. No power, starting to get dark, and then it was raining so hard it was running off the bill of my hat, and I just thought, I just didn't care though. I mean, you're just standing there, you just feel lost. And then I started hearing yelling, and I looked down, and they're pulling people out. You know, the coroner had gone in and kind of surveyed some houses, and if there were any survivors, they were doing what they could to get them out. They had put an elderly woman on her front door. That's the only thing they could get her out with, and there was a huge tree in the way, and so they were asking for people to kind of help pass her over. So I ran down and helped carry her and put her in the bed of a pickup truck. And there was so many injured and so many hurt, there wasn't enough first responder vehicles to handle it. So what they had done is, in the local strip mall, they had torn all the fronts out of the strip mall and used that as a local triage for all the injured.
I'm trying to call Dad this whole time because, you know, I don't know if he's safe, like if they made it down, you know, I knew he was at work, but I didn't know if he was okay. And I remember he called me, and just the sound of his voice, I didn't know how tense I was, but it was just a relief, and I could not make words. I was crying, and I just gave the phone to Lee, and I was just like, you know, just to hear him, to know he's okay.
I was at work, U.S. Steel. They put everybody in shelters. That plant has, I call them catacombs of shelters underneath. And so it took a few minutes to get, we were in no danger. They had us prepped in our safe place. But you could hear it's exactly like a locomotive going over your head for us because we were underground. It's exactly what it sounds like. So you knew one went by. A good friend of mine yelled at me. I went to the office. Then he called me on the phone and said, Pleasant Grove is destroyed. Well, I didn't ask questions. I put the phone down and immediately was thinking of the family. To this day, I don't know if I even asked to leave. You get to the blockade and there's hundreds of people standing in the rain, and first responders all in and out, power trucks, and they're not letting anyone by.
We found out he was in the parking lot where everybody was parked, you know, and we were like, well, we're going to come to you. So we got to your truck, and we drove down there, and Dad was talking to other people, and I finally got Mom on the phone. I mean, because our batteries were almost gone. So I finally got her on the phone, and they were able to talk for just a little bit, and I thought, okay, Dad, well, come on back to our apartment. And Dad was like, nope, I'm staying right here. And I said, where are you gonna sleep? He was like, I'll just rest in the truck. And I was like, because I want him with me, you know, I want him, because since I couldn't get to her, I wanted him. But he was just so adamant of, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving your mother.
He said that she was okay with it. Wasn't enough for me. So, twice I was threatened to go to jail, trying to sneak in, and they were very professional.
After everything calmed down, I got up and looked around, and it was just so quiet and just so peaceful, and got my purse, you know, and at some point I still had the phone on when I laid down, you know, on the floor, and I just closed the phone. I hated to do that to Matthew because that's the last thing he heard was me just screaming, you know. But anyway, I got my purse and went out the front door, and it was just so shocking to see your neighbors, their homes just gone. But about that time, the phone rings. It was Matthew on the phone. I said, "You're not going to believe this, but our neighborhood is gone." You know. Went across the street to one of the neighbors, and she was sweeping to get the debris out of their little foyer, and we just couldn't believe it. I mean, we sat on the steps. I asked her to pray, and she did. We just started walking, my neighbor and I, and we turned the corner and went down to another neighbor's house, who actually was their kindergarten teacher when they were little, you know. Their house was a mess. Looked like a waterfall coming from the ceiling, you know, but he asked, would it be, I could stay there. So I spent the night on the couch, moving the couch because water just kept creeping in, you know, from the ceiling. It was cold that night. I remember that it was cold. Ronnie got a jacket or something, or covers, you know, for me to put on. And we just talked all night long. Had the windows up. It was so cold, and you could hear people hollering and, you know, shouting, and then it would be quiet for a long time. Then that would start up again. But the next morning, of course, we didn't sleep. You know, can't sleep. Went outside looking, just observing, looking at our neighborhood. That it was just so blown away, and he came up right behind me, and it was great to see him again, because you don't know.
When I saw her standing at another house, you take a deep breath and you go, but you can't get there fast enough. But she couldn't see me, and I didn't want to surprise her and her, because there was debris everywhere. It wasn't safe to really be there. I didn't want her running, I didn't want her jumping or trying to get to me, so I just walked up and came in behind her when we saw each other. But I didn't yell, I just walked up behind her. And when she turned around, I had to catch her. That was like Katie said, it was great to hold her.
It's great to be held.
We got back there, and just seeing them for the first time, it was, oh man, it was such a precious moment to actually touch her, you know. So.
You hear her voice, but to actually see her.
Oh yeah, it's totally different. To know she's okay, but then to be able to hug her and just, you know, bring her close. Yeah. That's my mama, you know?
It was this huge forest of a neighborhood. They did their best to keep every tree they could, and it it was just nothing. I can't, it's something that's so hard to put into words when the day before it was a well-developed, well-matured neighborhood with full of growth and busy, and when you get there, it's a mile wide of rubble.
There were trees that were hundreds of years old, broken like a twig. One of these 100-year-old trees. We had a big oak. The way it lined up with the house is it lined straight up with the kitchen. It was right outside the enclosed deck. And Pam was in the kitchen trying to get downstairs, laying on the floor. In the, not part of the tree, the whole tree went the opposite direction. If it had gone the other direction, she would have been killed instantly. It would have crushed that house. And you look around and you think of things like that. And literally you hear people say this statement, you can replace things, but you can't replace your family.
And then I wonder why I'm still here, because there were young people. And when we left the neighborhood, when we got in the car actually and left the neighborhood, my stomach just cramped because I didn't know where I was.
It didn't look like
It didn't
home.
look like home at all.
The tornado had taken the roof and just picked it off the house and set it in the backyard, like it just kind of did like that.
Pieces.
Yeah, other people's attics, neighbors' attic stuff would be in their house. It was like it pushed it all down the street, you know.
The deck was completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
The furniture, everything gone.
The mantle was where all the pictures were. They were all smashed, and just to see like my room, you know, with it was just all just so damaged.
I think the room that got hit the worst was the kitchen and the dining room. When we actually went back, when we got to go back in the house the next day, the walls looked like, you know how you just peel a banana? The walls were just peeled.
My nanny, we had her dining room set, and that was all destroyed, and it was really sad. But then you think of all the good memories that went along with that, you know, with that stuff.
The only room that was not touched that looked pristine was the hall bathroom. Not a towel, nothing had been disturbed, but everything else was a wreck.
The center hall bath in the center of the house, you open the door, there was still a Dixie cup, empty Dixie cup sitting on the sink, hadn't moved. But then you come around and go into their bedroom and there's no roof. It's very odd what a tornado can do to a house. It just doesn't seem to even make sense sometimes. There was fiberglass in pictures hanging on the wall that are still hanging on the wall in between the glass and the picture. So like, there's just some weird stuff that happens with tornado damage.
We've lost furniture, you know, but nothing that just can't be replaced. Like the things that we treasure, our photos, our little movies of the children when they were little, all those things, we still have all those things. We lost our home. We didn't rebuild.
And afterwards, everyone there was so helpful. All the volunteers, first responders. You wanted for nothing. If you needed it, they got it. And it really made you feel better about people and what they did.
They just did so much. Like Philip said, people were just driving around with water, food, anything that we needed, prayer. It was the good that comes, the silver lining after the storm, you know.
The southern ism is everybody stands on the front porch and watches it go by, you know. We're so used to it, I guess, but when you've gone through it, it's a completely different experience now. You really respect the unpredictability of weather.
For years, she would not want me to go to work if there was a storm coming. And even now, she has her little prep station. She carries everything with her, and she goes to the safe place. It's not even a thought anymore, it's a reaction.
We will get a text message also from Mom saying, you know, there's bad weather today, you know, what's your plan? And so, you know, we're like, we're going to go downstairs, and we've got the kids, and, you know, they have their bicycle helmets, and, you know, we're good. And she's like, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And, you know, you think that it's never happened to us before, so why would, you know, it's someone else. It always happens with someone else. And that was just kind of how I, you know, you want to be aware that there's a storm coming, but it'll probably just pass over like it always does, you know. But I don't think that way at all anymore. Not at all. Yeah, like you said, I get my purse and go hunker down in our little safe place.
Few areas in our state were hit as hard as Tuscaloosa. About a quarter of the state's 253 deaths were reported from an EF4 tornado that nearly hit the University of Alabama head-on. Lauren Brown was at her off-campus house, and her mother in Elmore County was on the phone with her as the skies turned dark in Tuscaloosa. And what would be the last sounds she heard from Lauren? Listen to their story.
April 27th is just a moment in our life. It's kind of a defining moment. I remember vividly being in my backyard, walking around talking to her on the phone. And then, you know, I went through the entire day and talked to her a couple more times, a few text messages that day. And we discussed, she was worried because Coleman had some bad weather. She was worried about that. And so then it got to be 4:45, and I saw that the storm warnings were coming on. I had the television on at home in Wetumpka, and I saw that the warnings were coming out, and I knew that it was, you know, fixing to get bad. And I talked to her a few minutes before that, and we had talked about where she was, what she was supposed to do, and where her safe spot was, and to be prepared. She was still studying with her laptop in her safe space. She had not left that safe spot on the bottom floor most of the day. Like off and on, she had a little, and even when they found them, she had a massive giant pillow from a futon bed, and her laptop was there where she had like made a little nest. And so she was in that safe space. We saw it coming, and I was talking to her, and by this time back on the phone, and Parker said, "Mama, it's big. It's got little tornadoes coming off of it. It had little sprouts, you know, coming off the side of it." And she said, "Mama, I'm scared." And she could see a window from where she was, and it was completely black, she said. And I just kept saying, "Baby, get your head down, get your head down. It's headed right towards you." And she would say, "Mama, I'm scared. Mama, I'm scared." And I think her speech got faster as mine got faster as it got closer to her. And she had told me one point that it was black outside. And so, I mean, our last conversation was, "Mama, I'm scared," and me saying, "It's okay, baby, get your head down. Get your head down, it's coming right towards you." And then the phone cut off. I knew in that instant. I just knew. A mother just knows. I ran out the front my front door, and I said, "God, please don't take her." And I fell on my knees, and I knew that it was over. But it's hard with anything when you have a child, when you can't help them, whether it's if they're in a storm or no matter what they face. It's difficult. And you feel so helpless when your child is dying, and you're just 2 hours away, not able to do anything. I was constantly pacing and calling her phone and just hoping and praying that I was wrong, that my mom intuition was wrong. I couldn't leave right then because I couldn't. I just felt like I couldn't leave because of the weather and because I couldn't leave my kids, little I had at home, to come up here. But once we finally did, we were probably 10 minutes outside of Tuscaloosa when someone called to tell us that she was gone, that they had found her body and that she was gone. And I answered the phone. They called me. So I answered the phone, and I just remember handing the phone to my mom because I couldn't process what they were saying. And they were just telling me that they had found her body. But I mentally at the time, I couldn't process. I just handed the phone to my mom and I said, here, talk to them. I just can't even process what they're saying. It just took a minute to sink in to realize that it was true, that she was gone. She had Will Stevens, who was a friend of hers, and Danielle Downs, who was a roommate of hers, there with her. And they were in the same spot as her. They were all three together. They actually found Will laying on top of them. We had gotten there that night. They wouldn't let us at the house, and they told us that we had to find somewhere to stay because they couldn't let us in the morgue until the 8 o'clock the next morning. And she was at the VA center. They had set up different morgues because the morgue could not handle, the city morgue could not handle all of the bodies. So she was at the VA hospital, and we go there, and they start telling us that we can't actually physically touch or see their body, and that just wasn't acceptable for me. I had to put my hands on my child before I left Tuscaloosa. So they finally, after a couple of hours of me convincing them that I wasn't leaving until I did, they got the body prepared downstairs, and I can still remember walking down that cold, dark hallway to get to that room. One of the nurses from the VA hospital was standing out in the hallway, and she said, when I walked around the corner, she said, "Oh my goodness," she said, "I know this is your child. She looks just like you." And so, I mean, it was her. Her hair was curly, just like it was. She hated it, but it was just like God gave it to her. It was curly. And so, I mean, it was hard to stand there, but I had to physically touch my child. If you would have looked at Lauren that morning there in the morgue, there was nothing wrong with her. She had a drop of blood right here on her cheek. That was, I don't even think it was hers. She looked like she was asleep. There were so many other bodies that had been hurt in the storm that, you know, that were really messed up, but hers was perfect. And it said on her death certificate that she died of a blunt force head trauma. So I am just adamant about bike helmets, baseball helmets. Everybody has these sitting in their garage. All kids have bicycle helmets. I tell my kids at school, make sure you have your helmets. Make sure you tell your parents that you have to have a helmet ready. And I mean, I even had given out all my helmets, and when the tornadoes came through downtown Wetumpka, I put a cast iron pot on my head, but anything to protect your head, because you don't realize just how most of the deaths in tornadoes or hurricanes or any kind of damage like that are from blunt force head trauma. So you have to protect your head. Go into the funeral home. I mean, everything. I felt like I was hovering over someone else's life watching. I didn't feel like it was really mine. And I think that was kind of a protection thing to keep from really feeling what it was like. I think so many times, I mean, how did I ever do that? If you would have told me on April 26th that I was going to bury my child, or my child was going to be killed on April 27th, I would have said, no, I can't handle it. I need to go first. I would have said, I can never handle that. Some days it's one foot in front of the other, and some days, you know, I can take a couple of steps, but I will never change. And I've said before that it's not like the grief gets easier. The grief never gets easier. It never goes away. I think of Lauren every day. I think that my coping skills, I have learned to cope with this. It's like you carry this heavy weight. It's tied to your body, and you're dragging this heavy weight. But as the time goes on and as the years go on, you build up these muscles that you didn't know you had so that you can carry this weight, so that you can go on and continue. I think every day what she would be doing. Her friends are now married and having babies, and when I see those babies or hold those babies, I think how much Lauren would love them. Her best friends now have children, and I think so much about what she would love those babies so much. Absolutely love them. I've been reflecting on, some days it feels like it's been 10 years. Some days it feels like it's been 100. And some days it feels like it was yesterday. I can still see her. I can still feel that last hug. But then some days it feels like it's been so long since I held my baby. So it's just a constant battle you're in when you've lost a child. Lauren's tree was a magnolia tree. And I picked magnolia, but just because Lauren was such a southern girl. And what better tree is there in the South than a magnolia tree? It's strong. When it makes roots, I mean, it stays forever. I want her to be remembered for her perseverance, her enduring heart. And if she loved you, you knew it, and she gave you 100%. She was loyal to all of her close friends. If you were blessed enough to know her, you felt loved. You felt like you were the only person in the world when she was talking to you, and you knew that she loved you.
15 years later, and you don't have to say the year for people to know exactly what you mean when you say April 27th. It's a day that those who were impacted will never forget. We want to thank you so much for watching us and joining this look back on April 27th. And for the people who were impacted, their stories are examples of courage, strength, and resilience. Have a good rest of your night.